Hello and welcome to the RotD Deep Dive spoiler-filled discussion of 2016's The Autopsy of Jane Doe. And there's a few points I want to cover in this one. The first is not so much a complaint. I don't want it to be taken as a complaint or nitpicky or anything like that because it's more observational than anything else. I guess it was something that I felt may have been a little bit lacking, but that also may have been a purposeful thing in this movie, and that is the nature of the Jane Doe character and what ultimately they were trying to say with the corpse there. Was she a witch? Was it a witch created by the torture of the young woman? I think principally what I wanted to know is if Brian Cox had not been killed by his son, would the transfer of pain have caused her to completely heal and walk out of there? And if so, what would the ramifications of that have been? Would it worldwide destruction because of the rise of the terrible one or something? Or would she just simply have been, a girl set free? I thought that was kind of compelling, and I thought that it was a little bit unsatisfying that wasn't answered. Brian Cox's character was killed, and what he whispered to her about, I won't stop you, if you leave him alone, was pretty much left unanswered because he was stopped, and his son was obviously not left alone. That could have been, like I said earlier, a purposeful thing. That could have been ambiguous purposefully as a choice by the director or the writer, and if so be it. It's not really a complaint, but it did have a slightly unsatisfying feel to it. It's more of it raised that curiosity in my mind, and I hate having that splinter in my brain that I can't get at. The second point, the elevator conversation where Brian Cox is talking to Emile Hirsch about his mother, his wife and his mother. And I thought that was really masterfully done. I thought that was a really great intimate moment. It did break the flow of the film just a little bit, but I thought it was absolutely worth it. I think, honestly, that might have been to the benefit of the film. It might, because it might be that we actually needed to take that little bit of downtime, take that little bit of a breather and slow down a bit before getting back into the autopsy room. But I think the thing that I really liked about it was that despite the fact that it was clearly saying that the mother committed suicide, it didn't actually say that. The way that the dialogue was written was very carefully crafted, and you could tell that, and I really liked that. She was so happy. She was the light of my life. And, she never went anywhere without a smile. I had no idea that she was carrying that much pain with her. And, everybody says that I couldn't have seen it coming, but I feel like I should have. I really liked that element of that verbal dance and the connection between, the two characters that were talking there. I really, really enjoyed. I thought that was a really fine piece of acting. And maybe that was the pacing downtime that we needed. Not a lot of movies, especially horror movies, will go to that effort of saying, okay, we've had a lot of scares, we've had these two characters, now we're going to pump the brakes a little bit and we're going to give them a chance to be intimate, and we're going to do it in a way that makes that makes sense and is realistic, but at the same time also doesn't break the tension entirely. And I thought that pulled it off very, very well. This is going to get into nitpicky territory here. This next bit is the girlfriend. And I just genuinely wonder whether or not she was necessary at all, but more so at the end. For establishing some depth to the character of the son at the beginning, to flow with him throughout of, maybe this isn't what he wants to do for the rest of his life. Maybe he does have, a little bit of a ticking clock on this, and, both in life in general and also for this evening because he wants to get out and go on the date. I thought it was a good setup for the level of struggle in his brain between his obligation to his dad and his family and his legacy versus the independence that he wants to move forward with. So I thought that her being there in the beginning did work. What I question is at the end. That felt like it felt a little unnecessary, and it felt like what they were really going for more than anything else was to bookend the movie, since it started with all this carnage in that house that was totally unexplained and this corpse being found, that it ended with all this carnage that was unexplained and this corpse being found. And I get that, but it just kind of felt like, well, we have this character. What do we do with her? Well, let's toss another body on the pile and make the scene that the sheriff comes in on all the more mysterious. It just kind of felt like it was thrown in there. And if that was the choice, that was fine. But at the same time, it also threw it in there in a way that made Brian Cox swing the axe. So it wasn't without character consequence. If she had simply, been the victim of one of the three corpses that were walking around, I think that I probably wouldn't feel quite as strongly about that. But the fact that Brian Cox was the one that swung the axe and it hit her, and Jane Doe had tricked him, it felt more, it felt more impactful, not to her, but to him. And he had already been through so much. It just kind of broke my heart for him a little bit, all that much, all that more. And again, Brian Cox really sold that performance. It was very understated, with him being mortified, confused, kind of, banging the back of his head against the wall there. I thought that was really a great way to sell it, as opposed to a grand, no, anything like that another actor might have done. So I don't know. It's not really saying one way or the other. I think it's just more of something to point out and a point of conversation. And lastly, I think the point that I was getting at in the RotD review that I did earlier about the technical portion with the disjointed dialogue ultimately came down to the scene where the skin was being pulled back from Jane Doe to reveal the markings underneath that top layer. And I thought that worked really, really well. Brian Cox was obviously very focused on that. Emile Hirsch was focused on the radio, that it was playing that song, Let the Sunshine In. And, it was kind of breaking in and out, and lights were flickering, and he was noticing that odd thing going on. And the switch was starting to get flipped in his brain about, maybe there is something supernatural happening here. Maybe there's something that we can't explain, and maybe, possibly, we are in immediate danger. Maybe we shouldn't be here. The voice is talking about the storm. It's being very cryptic. It's breaking in and out with lines that are seemingly pertaining to them. And, you aren't getting out of there. Things like that. And it was starting to click with him. And, he was talking to his dad, maybe we shouldn't be here. And, Brian Cox is, focused on the skin and all that. And, wanting to, okay, fine, whatever. And, but the way that the editing was done there, and how, it was starting to snap back and forth between them faster and faster, and the lights were flickering more and more, and the voice was getting more and more sinister, and their dialogue was getting more and more disjointed. And then to finally, boom, it, like I said earlier, popped like a pressure cooker. I loved that. That is how to build tension. So many movies try to build tension with just long, slow shots and long periods of, post-production, sound being put in of a single violin note that's just ramping up in intensity. And I don't know, sometimes that can work. More often than not, it doesn't. And, building tension to the degree that the Autopsy of Jane Doe did, especially with that scene, I thought was masterful. And it's the kind of thing where now you see the difference between somebody that is capable of editing a movie and somebody that is artful at editing a movie. And so just hats off to that. That's about all I really wanted to discuss with the autopsy of Jane Doe here. If you want to bring up any points that you want to discuss, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me, if you like these videos, whatever, I really recommend that you leave comments in the comment section below and click subscribe. I will be reading any comments and writing, replying and engaging. Other than that, I really appreciate you making me a part of your day, and I hope to see you tomorrow.